Hey there, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. It's Dan, Nico, and Just. We hope you're having a great Halloween season. We're continuing our series of bonus episodes talking about horror in different types of media. Dan, we already covered literature. We already covered music. What are we talking about today?
In this week's episode of Don't Open That Door, we are talking about horror in board games.
Board games.
Board games.
Oof. Well, I guess right off the bat, I didn't even know that horror was in board games.
Why the fuck you lying?
That's a lie.
Stop fucking lying.
But Nico, what kind of elements of horror are actually in board games?
So a lot of it has to do, I think, with the setting first and foremost, particularly because when you're in these, game night type of mood and you pull out something that's a little bit spooky, you got to set the scene. You can't be like, oh, this is just a game of Monopoly, except you die. No, it's got to be like you're in a haunted house or some shit, or you're traveling through some ancient alien frigate or whatever. And so a lot of it has to do with just the aesthetics more so than any other board game genre, I think. But a lot of it also has to do with mechanics. And damn, why don't you go into that?
I think some board games, similar to video games, have resource management.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them also have just like spooky shit, as obvious as that sounds, but different themes, haunted house, kind of like setting, like Nico had said, haunted house, or you've got like a cosmic horror kind of themes, things like that.
Mm-hmm. I definitely also think one thing they have is they've all got like a kind of, for lack of a better word, like a style of play, kind of playing into what the mechanics you talked about earlier. So sometimes for some of these, it can be a race against the clock where you have to really try and survive something in a certain length of time. And other times it's you've got to dodge some kind of monster or monstrosities, plural, while trying to achieve your objective, And in that situation, it's kind of like almost like you're playing through a movie. There's been actually a couple times since I've started playing, like horror board games or whatever, where afterwards you sit down and watch a movie and you're like, bruh, you basically just played through, like a round of mansions or something like that.
Bro, deadass, we talked about that in our Night of the Demons review, the first one.
True.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yep. But I got to ask, the pod here, what standout elements do board games do particularly well? We talk about a lot of different types and things that make things horrific and scary. What do board games do well in those kinds of fields, do you think?
So I think one thing that horror in board games excels at is creating a sense of there being an actual antagonist and this sort of like adversarial sense of things. Oftentimes in board games, it'll just be like, for fun, and not that horror board games aren't fun, but they really specialize at either splitting people up and putting them against each other in a classic almost good versus evil type joint, or in just quite literally, like you were saying, a sense of survival where you just have to get down to the wire and survive no matter what.
Got you. Dan, your thoughts?
Nico said it exactly as I was going to say it. I mean, I think you've got like the team building thing. And one thing is like with Betrayal at the House on the Hill, it's cool because you start as like a group and you're just exploring everything. But then at some point in the game, there's sort of a flip where either one of the members becomes a traitor and kind of turns on everyone, or maybe there's like a NPC antagonist, if you will. And I really like that either sense of camaraderie or the sense of
betrayal.
Betrayal. And I think that game does it especially well. But I think other games, just like Nico said, there's usually a split and it kind of goes one way or the other.
For sure. One quick thing I have to add before we move on here. I think another thing that board games do exceptionally well is tension. Now, that really shouldn't come as any kind of surprise, because when we talked about literature, we said that, hey, like reading this stuff can help build tension as well. There's a lot of different board games out there where as the rounds go by, things become more tense. You either have more things to manage, there's more enemies popping up, there's a lot of stuff happening. So it becomes a situation where, when you start, it could almost be more leisurely. And to use Dan's example of Betrayal at the House on the Hill, when you first start, you're just walking around, you know, like whenever we play in our group, the beginning's normally pretty chill. Everyone's just walking around, exploring the rooms, whatever
I
else.
usually end up having to go explore whatever basement part of the game there's happening.
Yeah, such as his due diligence. But then as soon as that card gets flipped for the trader joint, it's like, oh shit. Oh shit. All bets are off now. Like all the people who aren't the trader, like we all bundle up. We're like, look, we ain't talking to you no more, bro. Like you got to do what you got to do. So I definitely like that. But what kind of other things, you guys mentioned splitting people up, but what other things do board games do to really achieve that sense of horror? We kind of talked through the things that they do well, but what, I guess, mechanically do they do on top of what we've already discussed?
So I think there's a definite aspect of there being an element of chance and just things being random. And obviously that happens intrinsically due to it being a game. But in the board game aspect, instead of, say, if you're in a video game, you just like see things happen, you can actually like roll the dice and watch in anticipation as that number finally ticks down and you're either screwed or you're, you reach some sort of sanctuary per se. And by having so much of it left up to chance, either it being by like dice rolls or maybe it's like a deck building type thing, it makes the experience different each time you play, which I think intrinsically makes board games more fun when you can, do it more than once, and gives it a lot of lasting power.
Now, Dan, I want to pose a kind of different question to you here.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit before about the antagonists that the game might throw at you, whether it's, kind of NPCs that operate on guidelines and rules, kind of like some of the enemies do in, say, a game like Arkham Horror, where there is no person controlling those monsters, it's the game controlling them. Or you might have something like in Mansions where there's a keeper player. We play the first edition, everyone. It's me. I'm the keeper, obviously.
Mansions of Madness. It's not just called Mansions, by the way.
True enough. Got to shorthand some of this stuff, okay? But no. So is it scarier to have a person behind the wheel or an NPC at times?
I think scarier is a person, because I think that, especially you, Justin, are very nefarious. And like, I always know that there's some plan going on to fuck us over. And an NPC kind of style, I wouldn't say scary as much as fun to help build camaraderie between the whole team. But Justin and I are also very competitive against each other. So when he was talking about like, oh, there's the traitor and it's like, fuck you now. Like, especially he and I mean, we all kind of are, but I think he and I especially are like, nah, fuck you. When we get down to the rules, reading over all the rules and nitpicking everything. Yeah, we do that.
Yo, there's one really big example that I'm going to bring up when I talk about my favorite game, because it's probably my favorite moment from my favorite game. But Nico, I want to ask you the same question. Are you more in terms of an NPC or a person?
I actually am in the opposite camp. I think it builds more tension when there is just that element of the unknown that you can't really identify, like, oh, it's just, it's Justin being a fuck like normal. If it's something that's more left to chance, like say in Arkham Horror, when you don't know like if and when a fucking elder god is going to be summoned down on you, that, from my perspective, one, increases sort of sense of camaraderie, like you were saying, Dan, but also it makes it, just to me, more tense because there's a bit more of a mystery to it. It's less personal for sure, but it feels more, I don't know, like in the moment isn't the right word. I don't really know what the right word is. I just like it better that way.
I actually agree with you, Nico. Surprise, surprise.
Oh, that is a surprise.
Maybe it's because a lot of the time I kind of take the role of like the bad person or whatever else like that. But the one thing I like about the NPC is, to your earlier point, Nico, about chance. So, for example, if we're playing a game like Nemesis, for example, or
Sure.
Death May Die, where those monsters are going to move however the cards say they're going to move.
Yeah, we don't control that.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here like, oh man, like I know that they're gonna go like like, like suss out this person? Can I figure out what they're going to do? Because like, me, like my infamous thing I like to do is like, I like to save up a bunch of cards and then do like a chain reaction thing. And it's like, wait, what room are you in? Nope. Like 3 times. So
just activating your fucking trap cards.
Pretty much. But I think that kind of NPC element to it, it changes it a little bit. And I think those games are sometimes the ones that I have a lot of really kind of like fond memories of the camaraderie, but also like some of the other things that go on. But, and I probably should have asked this, earlier on, but hey, this is one of those more open free sessions here. What motivates you, Nico and Dan, to play a board game?
I thought you meant like, what motivates you just as a person?
That's the next bonus episode.
Spite.
Yeah. But why play a board game in 2021? We've got the internet. We've got, PlayStation 4s. 5 exists, but I've never seen one. So we're going to say we have PlayStation 4s.
Yeah. Just like North Dakota, they don't actually exist.
Yeah, it's just a dream. So why? Why play? Nico or Dan?
I think that there's a cool sense of, I guess, camaraderie. And not that you can't get that in video games, because you absolutely can, but it's a different type of camaraderie, I guess. Like to me, it's really fun to get you and your homies just hanging out at the crib, open up a board game and you're just, I don't know, playing some music or whatever, set mood lighting or just do whatever the fuck you're doing and just kind of get together and play this game. And I think that there's a certain sense of fun and again just camaraderie when you're sort of like setting up the board and doing all that. Like as weird as that sounds, I feel like that all kind of plays into it a little bit.
Oh, definitely.
And I don't think it's like better or worse than video games. It's just a different type of setting, I guess, that I think is cool.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say from my point of view is, so we're all musicians here, and I got into vinyl maybe like 6 years ago, give or take. And one thing that I really like about vinyl is the experience. Like, I like digging through crates. I like the physical record in my hands. I like putting the needle down. I enjoy hearing, like the little scratchy noises at the start when you listen to a record.
What was that one fucking record that kept starting over and like never ended?
I still have that video. Wasn't it Supremes or something? Or?
Yes. So Bonner was asking me about this the other day. It was a Diana Ross and the Supremes record we had. Yeah. And literally, I think it was actually You Keep Me Hanging On.
It was like legit terrifying.
And the record had such a bump in it, dear listeners, that whenever it would like hit that bump in the record, it would push it back. It would push the needle back. So we basically had like an A-B repeat going for like ever.
No, it wasn't a bump. It was the center of the vinyl was warped a little bit. Like there was a bit of a bend in it. So when it got towards the end, it slowed down all actual fucking horror movie like and got like haunted as hell sounding. And then it just started over because that's okay. That's not a thing that happens when your house is haunted.
Yo, there's another record that I actually have possession of.
The organ one?
Yo, fuck me. So we thought we were going to get a record, Lionel Hampton at the Vibes, right? Yep. That's the name of the record. And so we're over here thinking we're going to get some like vibraphone or something like that. Nope. Put that shit on, some haunted ass organ tunes come out. And we're all like, oh, nah. And to this day, Bonner is always like, oh, bro, put it on. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like I have that record. I'm never going to play it.
Not in my house.
Like I'm not playing this record unless all 4 of us are in the same place. Maybe then. But anyways, that whole vinyl metaphor aside, all that to say, I think there is, as much as I enjoy doing things, over the internet or, like we can play a game, it's digital and it's so hard to describe, but there is something about physically playing a game. And in my culture, Trinidadian culture, all fours, dominoes, like these games are still huge in our community. And the reason why is because of the physical aspect. And it's not just the physical aspect. It's like we're all there in the same room. We all talk shit to one another. Sometimes, we like play into like the mystery and the atmosphere a little bit. And it's just like, it's not that you can't do that with games. It's just different with the board game is kind of my take on it. And Nico, I'm sure you agree as well, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one quick thing that I will add too is that board games are a really, really great way to get introduced into new media. Like when I brought over Betrayal at the House on the Hill years ago and got us all, into this shit, that is pretty much what led to us eventually getting more into like cosmic horror and role-playing games and like D&D and shit, and all of that came from just, being sampled into different little aspects of stuff through the chance of just playing board games. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm sure you could lead down that chain to get to this podcast too. That probably set us on the path to the podcast.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I remember it was like not too long after, I'd graduated from college or whatever like that. And me and Dan, we had a spot. Nico would pop by like all the time. And Nico was like, oh, like I brought this game, like Betrayal at the House on the Hill. And I was like, this shit's probably about to be lame, but let's try it out. Why not? And we had the correct music for it. And we had a lot of things right. And we had a group of like friends, like we were all already friends. And that's kind of like a window into it where it's like, oh, I thought it wasn't going to be very cool. But then like after like, we played it like a couple times and I was like, oh shit, this is pretty cool. It was cool because it's like a scary story that, you're actually going through. And I like scary stories. So that always kind of hooked me because I was never like, aside from like the occasional game of like Monopoly or whatever, like I was never before that super big into board games.
That's a different kind of horror.
Yes. Yes, it is. But like just the horror element was cool. And then Nico also was like, oh, you ever heard of like cosmic horror? And I'm like, what's that? So things changed after that. But we talked about music. Dan, how do you set the stage? Because the game will provide horror, but you can too. How do you set things up to play a board game?
So big part of it for me is the music. And you already kind of mentioned that when we first were playing Betrayal, wasn't it like storming outside too, I think?
It
Yes.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was going through Spotify and found a playlist called Dark and Stormy. And I guess the genre, would technically be what, like dark electronic pop or something like that?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
I call it dark pop for
Yeah.
short, but yeah.
And man, that playlist became like our
Like Anthem or
theme.
some shit.
Yeah. And I mean, we played that shit so much and we're all into that genre of music now that we all just actually call it Dark and Stormy, even though that's not really the genre. Like, we just call it Dark and Stormy. But that played a big part into, I think, the board game too. And then sometimes we'll like dim the lights a little bit and, whatever. And that, I think the music is the big part that helps set the mood. Or sometimes we'll do, instead of Dark and Stormy, we'll put on like atmospheric, spooky music or something,
I think one thing as well. So this is kind of like the most I've ever gone out. So one year, a couple years ago, we had a Halloween party and it was alien themed. And the game we were playing was going to be Nemesis, which is basically Alien, the board game. It was really awesome. And I remember like we all were like, oh, like we're all like dressed up as something related to the theme. I did like a kind of halfway Gender Ben Ripley almost. And Nico was a very special space monkey. And Dan was an alien.
I was Harambe in space.
There was a trend of Nico's Halloween
and I had
costumes.
A crowbar.
I have a picture of that somewhere. I gotta find that.
Why is that not on our website?
I don't know.
That needs to be there. So there's that. And so we even had like, I put like black lights in like everywhere in the house. And the board was actually reflective of the black lights.
And it glue in the dark. Glowed? Glue?
Glowered.
It was luminous.
Cloud.
Glowered.
Whatever verb you want to input there, it was awesome. And on top of that, I gave everybody like a little orb that like lit up and you could change the orb to the color corresponding to the character you were.
That was dope.
And we also had like 50,000 glow sticks that I'm still finding in my house to this day. So
I believe that.
the whole thing though was like, that was just fucking awesome to do. And it set the mood so well that, and Nico was playing, I think like some kind of like, were you playing Mass Effect stuff?
Yeah, I was playing the Mass Effect theme while we were doing it. Like the entire soundtrack for all three games.
Yeah, like it was just fucking awesome. And I think when you go into it with a setup like that, you really can, it's like the next level shit. But you don't even have to do all that. I think the most important thing is just like going in with like an open mind. You know, like go into it with like a positive attitude as it was, which is not that hard when you have a great group of friends. Oh. Nico, anything else aside from the music and the lights?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to embrace the horror aspect of it, you can start the night off by filming your own snuff film.
Wow.
I mean, I guess you could.
Not saying you should, but you
Not
could.
an official DOTD stance.
Yeah, we are
Not
DOtD.
a stance.
Do not officially support or condemn the views of our authors. This is not even a follow-up to what Nico just said, but what's the scariest board game you played? And what's your favorite? We were going right, and this man didn't even take left. This man went down into
I went
the
up.
earth.
Oh, yeah, no, down is correct, actually.
So, scariest board game and your favorite. And when I say favorite, you got to name a favorite moment. So, I want to go ahead and we'll start with you, Nico, because you, much like me, you too have many moments in these games. So, scariest and favorite/favorite moment.
So, scariest for me was it was the last time that you and I were playing Arkham Horror, actually, where we were
Jesus Christ.
we both had two characters and we were like going unnecessarily hard as hell against Cthulhu, and it got like down to the wire, and I don't remember the name of my dude. He was like something Marsh, and he was just like a big dumb idiot who was strong as hell, and he like fucking punched Cthulhu to death or some shit. But my favorite, actually, no, that is my favorite moment now that I say that. Why wouldn't it be?
All right. And is that your scariest one as well?
Yeah, it's a double there for both. Yeah.
All right. Dan, how about you?
I think my scariest one I've played is probably Arkham Horror as well. There were a lot of times where, just trying to like, I guess to go back a little bit, I think I might agree with you guys on like the NPC being scary with that element of chance and everything. But that game has a lot of that in trying to beat Cthulhu or whichever ancient one.
Fucking
maybe
Haster or whatever.
Yeah. My favorite moment, I've got a lot, I feel like, but I think maybe it would be Betrayal at the House on the Hill. And there was one like haunt in there where anytime there was like a word with double O's, you had to like poop like an owl. Yeah, that shit was so funny.
We had to take like a 10-minute break from the game when we read the directions because we were all laughing too hard.
Yep. So I think that might have been my favorite moment. Either that or just the first time we played it and just with the music and the stormy night and discovering like this new game and everything. Either of those two.
I think the scariest one for me is actually it's Mansions of Madness. And that's because, as I said before, I'm typically the keeper or like the person controlling the monsters, but sometimes Nico will take that when I don't feel like doing that. And one thing I really like is, so you have your character, you have your strengths and weaknesses, but no one in that game is really all powerful. You're not going to pick a character and you're safe. You're never safe in that game. And the keeper has these cards, these Mythos cards, and he can do anything to you. Like literally, you have no idea what the keeper can do to you. You could just be walking along the path and then bam, all of a sudden like, nope, take a step back. Nope, go this way. Nope, go that way. I like that. I think that is pretty reminiscent of like a couple horror movies. So that's the scariest. My favorite is, I feel like I got to give it up to Nemesis, because I think that Nemesis is one of those where, dear audience, Nico's really salty right now because we were supposed to play that last time and then did not.
This motherfucker.
The status has been did not since COVID started. So
Yeah.
it's been a minute. But no, like the one thing I really like though is the game sets you up and everybody has secret objectives. These objectives could literally be for player 1 to kill player 3. You do not know. Like you literally don't know what anyone's objectives are. And you can lie. You can tell them, dude, I'm just trying to get an alien egg. And then as soon as they get like in a room with an airlock, oops, sorry, and like kill them. And then you'd be mad salty afterwards. So my favorite moment is actually in Nemesis. So Dan and I were playing and Dan kind of gave a little preamble where it was like, Dan and I are always very competitive against each other when we play these games. So Dan's over here playing these like mind games with me because I'm thinking his role is to like kill me. And so we get through everything and like he's putting me in these precarious ass situations. I'm like, bro, I know you're trying to kill me. And then he actually like does something aggressive. We end up losing, like we all end up dying anyways. And then I see his objective card and I was like, bro, it wasn't even your objective to kill me. And he was like, yeah, I know. And then I was like, bro, what the fuck is wrong with you? So that is probably one of my top favorite moments. And I'm going to pick one for the pod as well, which is Dan, Bonner, Nico, and myself. So Betrayal at the House on the Haunted Hill has an expansion called Widow's Walk. And the last haunt is basically, is it the last haunt in the Widow's Walk or the last haunt in the base game?
That's Widow's Walk. It's the expansion.
I don't remember. There is a haunt that basically is like the culmination of everything. And it's like, you have to like,
game.
Yeah, I think it's the base game, and you have to like fight through all the different seasons and everything like that. And it was really cool, and it was kind of like a culmination of all the effort because your results from previous haunts go into that one. So there's 4 different haunts you have to complete before you can do that one.
That's a good shout.
That was just a really like, oh man, like we've been playing this game for like a while now, and this is like the culmination. And it was like, damn, we beat it. And then they came out with an expansion. So yeah, that's pretty good. But we've talked through a lot of games. What game would you recommend? If somebody wanted to get into horror games, what would you recommend for them to start with?
I would say Betrayal at the House on the Hill. I think that the majority of the game is fairly simple to get into and understand. You know, sometimes board games will have a lot of different rules and you really have to read the rule book pretty carefully. And like, I mean, was it Mansions of Horror or Mansions of Madness that I think for months we would still go back and reread rules and whatever. So I think that Betrayal is a great game. It's fairly simple. Some of the haunts can get a little but if you find a haunt that you don't quite understand or whatever, it's easy enough to just be like, all right, you know what, we'll just skip this one and we'll keep playing until another haunt is revealed. And a lot of them are pretty easily digestible. And it's just a lot of fun. There's some cool ones, some scary ones, some spooky ones, and some really funny ones like the owl one. Yeah. So I think there's a good variety, and it's just a great, fun game.
Agreed. Nico, are you on the same wavelength there?
I do think that is the one I would recommend the most, in terms of ease. In terms of atmosphere, I would actually recommend either Nemesis or Death May Die. They are both just beautiful representations of both cosmic horror and, Nemesis being pretty much literally Alien, the board game.
Another one I want to shout out is Mountains of Madness.
Oh, that one's fun.
That game's so fucking funny.
It takes a concept of a horror game and turns it into a party game, which is nuts already. But basically every player, and you can play with like up to like, I think something like 5 or 6 people, but every player has a compulsion. So basically the game is pretty simple. You just have to basically match numbers and colors, but it gets a lot more complex than just that because everyone has a compulsion. So for example, last time we played, I had to crab walk around the table and also like jump up and down and like Bonner had to be called upon. Like, I forget what Nico's was. Everyone had some wacky shit going on. So getting across the fact that, hey, I need a card that says number 3 on it is almost impossible. But it's a ton of fun. It makes for some really organically fun moments. So I highly recommend that game as well for beginners. But that's it for this bonus episode. If you've never played a horror board game before, if you're interested at all, give it a shot. If you've got some friends, give it a shot. If you don't have no friends, no problems. Someone somewhere will play with you on tabletop.
It's true.
Cannot guarantee the character of said people, but somebody will play with you. And
they say a lot of weird shit in global chat.
And we've been kicked out of global chat too.
If you want to get in touch with us, ask us any questions, or just agree with some of the stuff we said, we're on Twitter and Instagram at DOtD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. Lastly, you can check out this and any other episodes on our website, DOtDhorror.com. But till then, that's been it from Dan, Nico, and Jus. Remember, life's just a roll of the dice, And as always, dear listener,
Nice.
don't open that door. Bye.